Cuba Archive is a project that documents deaths and disappearances in Cuba during the revolutionary process, during what is known as the Cuban Revolution, that we take starting from the Batista coup d'etat that ended democratic rule in Cuba. And actually, it covers loss of life from all sides of the political spectrum. Unfortunately, many people think that we document historical memory, crimes that were committed in the past. Sadly, nothing is furthest from the truth. Deaths in Cuba, stemming from the political process, continue to this day. And the sad thing is that they are little known by the international community. From the mass executions of the early 1960s, and people have in their mind that ended in Cuba and that the Cuban Revolution stopped executing its citizens. But in fact, extrajudicial assassinations have continued and continue to this day, sadly against opponents of the regime, political opponents, and this is not getting out into the public realm. In Cuban prisons, the conditions are horrible because there's no international monitoring. We don't know exactly how many deaths there are, but they continue to occur in great amounts, and anecdotally we get reports, although it's very difficult to document. Of course, people dying at sea, people dying in Central America, trying to reach the United States, escaping from Cuba, those deaths continue too. We can document some, but it's very difficult also because there's not a systematic approach to that. The sad thing is that we have in Cuba, after 58 years, a regime that violates all fundamental rights of their citizens, starting with the right to life. And that because of the massive propaganda that there has been with respect to Cuba and the legitimacy that most governments have afforded Cuba, even the great democracies of the world, starting with my own, the United States, the Cuban government enjoys total impunity. So these things are happening without most of the international community knowing, and without international mechanisms of accountability being enforced in Cuba. Sadly, the idea that the opening from the United States and other countries to Cuba has promoted a situation where Cuban people have been empowered with more rights. It's the contrary to that. And there is more repression in Cuba today, and there is a growing sense of impunity in the government. So the attacks against the population and the attacks against all rights, in fact, has increased in intensity, in number, and probably in the level of atrocity committed.